Imagine a world where simmering trade tensions suddenly cool off, sparking a wave of optimism that lifts stock markets and reshapes global economics. That's the electrifying vibe powering European markets this Monday. But stick around, because not everything is as rosy as it seems, and we'll dive into the twists that could leave you questioning the long-term impacts. Let's kick things off with the top headlines that are setting the stage for this week's financial drama. Stocks are riding high thanks to encouraging developments in US-China relations, as detailed in this piece on how equities are buoyed by the new week's positive momentum from Washington and Beijing. https://investinglive.com/stocks/equities-stay-boy-to-start-the-new-week-on-china-2025107. Meanwhile, gold prices have dipped today, yet they're stuck in a holding pattern reminiscent of last week's uncertainty, offering a fascinating glimpse into market indecision. https://investinglive.com/news/gold-down-on-the-dash-but-price-action-stays-and-limbo-since-last-week-20251027. For a deeper dive into the technical side, check out this analysis explaining how the potential US-China agreement is exerting downward pressure on the precious metal market. https://investinglive.com/commodities/gold-technical-analysis-china-deal-weighing-on-the-dash-the-market-20251027. U.S. President Trump expressed confidence that a solid deal will emerge from his upcoming meeting with Chinese President Xi, hinting at progress ahead. https://investinglive.com/news/a-president-trump-i-think-well-come-away-with-a-deal-from-11-meeting-20251027. On the other side, China's foreign ministry confirmed they've achieved a fundamental agreement with the U.S., laying the groundwork for smoother bilateral talks. https://investinglive.com/news/China-foreign-ministry-says-reached-a-basic-consensus-with-the-dash-the-dash-us-20251027. Trump also mentioned he might finalize an arrangement regarding TikTok this week, stirring up discussions on app ownership and data privacy. https://investinglive.com/news/Trump-says-might-sign-this-week-20251027. Canada's Prime Minister Carney signaled readiness to engage in discussions with the U.S., showing a diplomatic willingness to address cross-border issues. https://investinglive.com/news/Canada-PM-Carney-we-stand-ready-to-sit-down-with-the-dash-the-20251027. Down under, RBA Governor Bullock shared that their strategies are effectively curbing inflation while maintaining strong employment levels, which is great news for job seekers in Australia. https://investinglive.com/central-bank/RBA-governor-bullock-we're-bringing-down-inflation-very-keeping-jobs-very-7. Germany's October IFO Business Climate Index came in at 88.4, slightly beating the expected 88.0 and reflecting cautiously positive sentiment among German entrepreneurs. https://investinglive.com/news/Germany-October-IFO-business-climate-index-884-versus-880-versus-2027. The Eurozone's September M3 money supply grew by 2.8%, matching expectations year over year, which for beginners means there's steady liquidity in the economy but not an excessive flood that could spark inflation worries. https://investinglive.com/news/Eurozone-September-M3-money-supply-28-versus-expected-20251027. UK retail sales in October showed a decline of 27% compared to the previous period's 29%, indicating ongoing challenges for consumer spending in Britain. https://investinglive.com/news/UK-October-retailing-reported-sales-27-prior-20251027. And don't forget this handy reminder, European clocks sprang backward by an hour over the weekend, adjusting for daylight saving time and potentially affecting trading hours or your morning routines. https://investinglive.com/news/reminder-the-clocks-turn-back-by-and-hour-and-Europe-on-the-weekend-20251027. Now, turning to the market movements, the Australian dollar took the lead in gains, while the Swiss franc trailed behind on the day. European stocks edged up modestly, with S&P 500 futures climbing 0.8%. U.S. 10-year Treasury yields rose by 3.1 basis points to 4.027%, signaling investor shifts toward riskier assets. Gold tumbled 2.2% to $4,019.14, underscoring the safe haven metal's vulnerability. WTI crude oil slipped 0.2% to $61.32, perhaps reflecting broader stability. Bitcoin, on the other hand, jumped 0.8% to $115,415, embracing the crypto comeback. But here's where it gets controversial: is this US-China détente truly a win for everyone, or just a temporary pause that could backfire? The week began with relatively subdued activity as President Trump and his team departed Malaysia en route to Japan, yet they made it clear that progress is underway before his pivotal sit-down with President Xi later this week. While details remain scarce, officials from both the US and China are optimistic that the foundation is set for another ceasefire agreement, potentially delaying major decisions until at least next year, a tactic that sparked debates about whether it fosters real solutions or merely postpones inevitable conflicts. This optimism fueled market enthusiasm, with US futures maintaining their early gains from a gap-higher opening. S&P 500 futures are still up 0.8%, while Nasdaq futures have surged 1.2%, aiming to surpass last week's historic highs and building momentum in tech-heavy sectors. In the currency arena, the US dollar showed mixed performance but leaned slightly weaker overall, with minor fluctuations dominating. The euro strengthened 0.1% against the dollar to 1.1638, and the dollar weakened 0.1% versus the yen to 152.76. The Australian dollar emerged as the top performer in this risk-friendly environment, rising 0.6% to 0.6555 against the greenback, buoyed by positive sentiment. Trump's continued criticism of Canada didn't rattle markets much, as traders largely shrugged off his outbursts. The US dollar to Canadian dollar pair fell 0.2% to 1.3971, suggesting that diplomatic rhetoric is taking a backseat to broader optimism for now. And this is the part most people miss: could Trump's aggressive stance toward allies like Canada signal a more isolationist America, reshaping global trade alliances in ways that benefit or harm economies? Shifting to commodities, gold and silver encountered significant selling pressure at the week's outset. Gold dropped over 2% to $4,019 but continues its stalemate from last week, with buyers stepping in near the $4,000 mark to prevent a steeper decline, illustrating the ongoing battle between safe haven demand and economic recovery hopes. Silver mirrored this trend, falling more than 2% to $47.40, setting the stage for its lowest level in over 3 weeks and potentially affecting industrial demand. Cryptocurrencies, meanwhile, are thriving amid the US-China positive vibes, injecting new energy into risk-taking. Bitcoin has risen 4% since the weekend kicked off, while Ethereum is up nearly 6%, both challenging their 100-day averages and showcasing how digital assets can mirror traditional market moods. For example, imagine how blockchain innovations might evolve if global tensions ease further. Do you think these trade deals are paving the way for lasting peace, or are they just diplomatic smoke and mirrors? And what about the potential fallout on countries like Canada or tech giants like TikTok owners? Is Trump's approach bold leadership or reckless brinkmanship? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear if you agree, disagree, or see a counterpoint I've missed.